Welcome to our channel dedicated to discussing girl relationships. Here, we delve into the intricate tapestry of day-to-day challenges that individuals encounter in their lives. Let us embark on this journey together. In the video shared, the storyteller vividly recounts a tumultuous chapter from her high school days, where the backdrop is painted with the unsettling union of her father and an abusive alcoholic. Despite a courtship barely spanning 2 months, they hastily exchanged vows, only for the relationship to quickly unravel into a distressing cycle of violence and turmoil. Initially driven to seek divorce after enduring physical assaults, her father's resolve crumbled under the assailant's hollow promises of change. However, the peace was short-lived as the toxic pattern of abuse soon shifted its focus onto the storyteller herself, plunging her into a harrowing ordeal of fear and despair. What began with verbal tirades eventually escalated into physical violence, leaving scars both visible and hidden. Despite pleas for intervention, the father's reluctance to confront the issue allowed the abuse to persist. Eventually, the storyteller sought refuge in college, dreading the very notion of returning home for holidays. Formerly diagnosed with a trauma disorder stemming from her stepmother's actions, the storyteller's attempts to seek solace from family members proved futile. Despite assurances of protection, familial gatherings remained tainted by her stepmother's presence, resulting in humiliation and anguish. With each passing year, the emotional chasm widened, as family bonds strained under the weight of unresolved conflict. The recent passing of her father served as a somber reminder of the fractured dynamics within her family. Despite her resolve to distance herself from toxic environments, her aunt's assumption that the removal of her stepmother would herald her return felt presumptuous. Declining the invitation with a mix of resignation and defiance, the storyteller resolved to chart her own path, untethered from the shadows of past trauma. In this narrative, resilience emerges as a guiding beacon, illuminating the path towards healing and self-preservation. As the storyteller navigates the complexities of familial estrangement, her journey serves as a poignant reminder of the enduring power of self-determination in the face of adversity. As time wore on, the notion of reconciling with my family appeared increasingly distant, almost like a flickering light fading into the distance. The tumultuous events of the past 2 decades had woven a complex web of tension and resentment, rendering our relationship seemingly irreparable. When I mustered the courage to express my sentiments to my aunt, I chose my words carefully, maintaining a calm yet resolute demeanor. With each syllable uttered, I conveyed the sobering truth that our paths were likely to diverge indefinitely. Despite this acknowledgement, I made sure to extend genuine wishes for her happiness and success in all her endeavors, hoping that she would find solace and fulfillment beyond the confines of our strained familial ties. In contrast, my uncle's approach mirrored a broken record, the same familiar tune playing on repeat. With each interaction, he implored me to reconsider my decision to distance myself from the intricate tapestry of family connections. His words echoed with the weight of tradition and the echoes of generations past, emphasizing the sanctity of familial bonds and the enduring hope for reconciliation. Yet, beneath his well-intentioned pleas lay the painful truth. The chasm between us ran deep, carved by years of misunderstanding and discord. Despite his earnest appeals, I couldn't shake the conviction that some wounds were simply too deep to heal, and some bridges too charred to rebuild. And so, I remained steadfast in my resolve, navigating the turbulent waters of familial estrangement with a heavy heart and a flicker of hope for peace, albeit from a distance. Facing this barrage of conflicting emotions and familial obligations, I found myself at a loss for words as I contemplated the impending conversation with my uncle. Was I being unjustly obstinate in denying them a second chance? Was I unfairly penalizing them for the transgressions of my stepmother? The uncertainty gnawed at me, leaving me adrift in a sea of doubt. In the wake of this turmoil, I turned to the online community for solace and guidance, seeking reassurance and perspective from those who had traversed similar paths. The outpouring of support and empathy served as a balm for my wounded spirit, providing a glimmer of clarity amidst the chaos. Ultimately, I decided to postpone the conversation with my uncle, recognizing the need for additional time to process my emotions and weigh my options. By asserting my boundaries and prioritizing my well-being, I took a crucial step towards reclaiming agency over my life. Reading through the insights shared by fellow members of the online community, I found validation in their affirmations of self-worth and empowerment. They echoed my sentiments, underscoring the fundamental truth that familial love should never come at the expense of one's dignity and safety. Reflecting on their words, I came to realize that my family's failure to protect and support me in times of need was a profound betrayal of trust. Their complacency in the face of my stepmother's abuse spoke volumes about their priorities, laying bare the stark reality that blood ties alone do not constitute a family. With newfound clarity and resolve, I embraced the notion that true familial bonds are forged not through shared genetics, but through mutual respect, empathy, and unconditional love. And though the road ahead may be fraught with uncertainty, I take solace in the knowledge that I am not alone in my journey towards healing and self-discovery. It's your turn to make a choice, but let's be real, the whole "you only have one family" spiel is just manipulative nonsense. Being related by blood doesn't automatically make someone family, and I couldn't agree more with that sentiment. I've made my decision. I've chosen my family, and it's not necessarily the one I was born into. My biological family and I clashed too much, so instead, I found solace and love in my best friend's family. They've welcomed me with open arms, making me feel cherished and valued. After all, family isn't just about blood. It's about the bonds of love and support. If my uncle tried feeding me that line about having only one family, I'd clap back and remind him that they made it abundantly clear who they chose to prioritize. I've moved on, and they should too. If they dare to bring up the whole "blood is forever" nonsense, I'd swiftly remind them of the abuse I endured at the hands of my stepmother, and their complicity in allowing it to happen. It's sickening to think that my own father turned a blind eye to my suffering, forcing me to sever ties with him. Throw the whole family away? Honestly, it sounds tempting. My own brother assaulted me, and while my father showed some backbone by kicking him out, the fact that he even had to do so speaks volumes. It's heartbreaking to realize that blood ties don't guarantee love or protection. To the original poster, you deserve a family that cherishes you, not one that merely pays lip service to the idea of love. From what you've shared, it's clear that your so-called family doesn't value your presence or well-being. Don't fall for their empty promises. Actions speak louder than words. As for the next story, the situation with your mother locking her door due to a childhood incident is troubling. It's understandable that your mother felt betrayed and violated by your actions as a child, but it's been over 20 years, and locking doors seems like an extreme and unwarranted response. It's crucial to have a frank and open conversation with her to address her concerns and find a resolution that respects both of your needs. This issue has persisted for a long time. My mother continues to lock her bedroom door whenever I visit, a habit she has maintained since I was a child. Despite my repeated attempts to address this, she persists. Even though I am now an adult and haven't engaged in such behavior for 22 years, she holds on to past grievances, using them as ammunition in our present-day interactions. The situation is worsened by her tendency to make snide remarks, turning even the simplest conversations into battlegrounds where I am constantly on edge, anticipating her next jab. Adding to the frustration is her tendency to make unreasonable demands. For instance, she once asked me to transport their belongings across the country for free simply because we are family. When I declined, citing practical reasons, she responded with thinly veiled threats, warning me to be cautious of the consequences of my words. It's a toxic dynamic that leaves me feeling drained and disheartened, especially as the holidays approach and the pressure to visit mounts. Despite my desire to see my father, whom I deeply love, I find myself hesitant to subject myself to my mother's toxic behavior once again. The prospect of enduring her passive-aggressive comments and petty grievances is daunting, and I'm at a loss for how to navigate this delicate situation. Suggestions from the online community range from ignoring her behavior and focusing solely on my relationship with my father to confronting her directly and setting boundaries. Yet, her dismissive attitude toward my feelings only reinforces the sense of futility in attempting to mend our fractured relationship. Ultimately, I'm torn between my longing to spend time with my father and my reluctance to subject myself to further emotional turmoil. It's a complex dilemma with no easy solution. And as the holidays draw nearer, the weight of my decision hangs heavy on my shoulders. The heart of the matter lies in my unyielding affection for my father, which compels me to seek avenues to maintain contact with him despite the strained relationship with my mother. However, it's abundantly clear that her indifference toward my well-being significantly complicates matters, leaving me torn between my deep love for my father and the toxic environment perpetuated by my mother's behavior. One potential resolution, as suggested by some, entails scheduling visits with my father outside of the family home, thereby minimizing my exposure to my mother while still nurturing my relationship with him. Alternatively, I could choose to stay in a hotel during visits, sparing myself from the discomfort of being subjected to my mother's passive-aggressive remarks and petty grievances. This approach would also grant me the freedom to disengage from confrontational situations and prioritize my emotional well-being. The notion of my mother harboring a grudge over a childhood transgression for over 2 decades is utterly ludicrous and speaks volumes about her character. In response to such petty behavior, some have suggested employing equally petty tactics, such as covertly leaving 50-cent coins around her living space, alluding to acquiring them from her room, thereby shedding light on the absurdity of her prolonged resentment. Transitioning to the next story, a 21-year-old woman expresses her apprehensions about her boyfriend's reluctance to allow her to spend time with her friends, particularly in social settings like bars. While she acknowledges his concerns about safety and trust, she finds herself yearning for the freedom to socialize outside the confines of their relationship. Despite attempts to suggest alternative plans that would include him, his reactions betray a possessive streak that not only stifles her autonomy but also strains her friendships. Just saying yes to the idea didn't end well the last time I brought it up. It turned into a big problem, and he kept accusing me of selfishness, insinuating that I wanted to live the single life or that I never wanted to do things with him. The truth is, I always try to suggest fun activities or bring up date ideas, and I genuinely enjoy spending time with him. However, I miss my friends and having an identity outside of our relationship. How can I communicate my feelings to him in a gentle way that won't escalate into an argument? Update: I'm not entirely sure if edits notify people. I'm new to Reddit. Nonetheless, I want to express my gratitude for everyone's insight. Reading through the responses made me physically sick because I realized I've been oblivious to red flags that have put many of you in bad situation. And it seems I found myself in a similar predicament. We had a huge argument last night, and it didn't go well at all. Some of the things you all mentioned might eventually happen, so I've decided to try to end the relationship and approach the leasing office to break the lease we signed just a few weeks ago. I genuinely appreciate the time you've taken to try to help me. You'll probably encounter similar responses in the comments, and that's because so many of us have been in this position it's all too familiar. When you mentioned that he doesn't realize how his mood changes when you express your desires, he actually does. He's not oblivious. He's aware that if he reacts a certain way, you'll likely back down, given your non-confrontational nature. He'll continue to subtly manipulate the situation to get his way, all while pretending it's for your safety or the sanctity of your relationship. Absolute rubbish. His manipulation tactics are beyond belief. It's like he's a master boxer with an unbelievable reach. What he's doing is taking advantage of your love for him and exploiting your aversion to conflict because it's worked thus far. He'll use any guilt trip he can muster to keep the charade going. But here's the thing. Your relationship won't thrive if you lose sight of your individuality. It won't work if you neglect your own needs and forsake your social connections. Your relationship can't survive if you feel like you've missed out on life's experiences. And above all, it can't flourish if your partner doesn't respect you in every way that matters. Compromise should be a two-way street, not based solely on his fears. He knows this. He's been married, for crying out loud. Right now, your relationship is on a trajectory that could lead to your detriment. It's time to reclaim your independence and prioritize your well-being. Being in this relationship might make you very, very sad, and you're potentially missing out on the joy of fun, social connections, and being included in various activities. In the moment, it might feel like you're expressing love by giving in to him and complying with his demands, but in reality, it's not love, it's a sign of weakness. However, it's undeniably challenging to stand firm when faced with someone who actively manipulates the situation to make you feel trapped into accepting his choices, all to keep the relationship intact. But remember, this isn't love. If you decide to address this issue with him, you can start by affirming that he's free to socialize with his friends whenever he wants. Emphasize that you don't impose restrictions on his movements because you trust him, and if he reciprocates that trust, it should be sufficient. Your friends who are in relationships understand that their partners have lives outside of their relationship, and you deserve the same autonomy. If he offers excuses, acknowledge his perspective but assertively express your disagreement, highlighting your desire for a social life. Furthermore, consider his age in relation to yours. While age gaps in relationships are not inherently problematic, it's concerning if he's leveraging his life experience to manipulate and control you instead of fostering a mutually respectful partnership. If he struggles with trust issues, he should seek guidance from a therapist, not project his insecurities onto you, especially considering the significant age difference. Remember, you deserve to be treated with respect and dignity in a relationship. If he persists in trying to emotionally manipulate you or restrict your freedom, it may be time to reevaluate the relationship. Ultimately, the decision rests with you, and only you know what's best for your life. Wishing you the best of luck in navigating this challenging situation.